property right quick. Made sure I did that part right. Check it again. 2 times x squared is 2x squared. 2 times 2x is 4x, and then plus 3. Okay, so I have not changed the problem yet. Okay, so but when you change the problem, you have to undo. So you have to write an inverse so that you can get it back to that original problem again. Complete the square. Divide 2. 2 divided by 2 equals 1. Take that result and square it. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 squared is 1. 2 divided by 2 equals 1. 1 times 1 is 1. That's how you complete the square. But if you check your math again, now 2 times 1 is 2. I don't see plus 2 anywhere up here. So 2 times 1 is 2. I added 2 to the problem. I can't do that. So when you add 2, you have to undo that by saying minus 2. Because I added 2, I have to undo 2. So when you think about this, 2 minus 2 is 0. So I added 0 to my problem. Check this on your own and make sure that this still matches the original function. And it should, because all I did was add 0 to the problem. Okay, let's keep going. This is a perfect trinomial. When I write a perfect trinomial, everything in the parentheses is going to be the same. X times x is x squared. 1 times 1 is 1. Positive 1 plus 1 is positive 2. It's a perfect trinomial. Everything in the parentheses will be identical. 3 minus 2 is 1. So now my finished product is 2 times x plus 1. I see 2 of them, and then plus 1. It is now in standard form of a quadratic function. That's my standard form for a quadratic function. My vertex is nothing but your translation of the graph. How did the graph translate? When we say the word translate, that means up, down, left, right. That's a translation. If I go left or right, I go opposite of the sign. If I go up and down, I follow the sign. In the parentheses, what does it tell me to do? It says I go opposite of the sign. So I'm going left 1. Plus 1, it says follow the sign. So I go up 1, and that's my vertex. I did my rough sketch of my graph. This is a min. Min, think about max and min. What variable works with max and min? My y variable. So I have a min at y equals whatever this number is, 1. So right here on this point right here, this point is -1 and 1. So I have a min at 1. A min at y equals 1. And some students, some classes and books fancy it up. They might say I have a min at f of -1 equals 1. That's a fancier way of writing out your max and min. F of -1 equals 1. That's just another way to write it. But in our book, we usually say min at y equals 1. That's your max and min. Your x and y intercepts, to find your x-intercept, you're going to plug in 0 for y and solve for x. To find your y-intercept, you're going to plug in 0 for x and solve for y. Domain and range. Let's talk about that. I do need to erase a little bit. Number 19, we may have to, 19, it's very important to look at a graph on this, because if you can't factor to find your x and y intercepts, if you can't do any factoring, then you'll have to use quadratic formula or completing the square to find out what x is equal to. Okay, so let's talk about domain and range. I won't go on my graphic calculator again. I'm see can I figure it out on my graphic calculator. It might sometimes it's easy to see and sometimes it's not. I have 2x and then hit the x squared button, plus, and then say 4x, and then say plus 3. And I want to check my windows. My windows are pretty standard at -10, +10, then tick marks of 1. -10, +10, tick marks of 1 on the Y. And let's graph that and just see what it does. I might can figure it out by just looking at it. Okay. Now you can also zoom in and zoom out. So if you go to the zoom, you can zoom in and out to make that graph a little tighter or a little bigger so you can see things. I personally like to play with the windows. So if I look at this, I'm going to do my windows on my X's. I'm going to go from, and I'm just writing my little notes. I'm going to make my windows go from -5 to probably 3. And on my Y windows, I'm going to make it go from probably -1 up to, I can keep it at probably 10. 10 should be good enough. So let's go to the windows and type it in that way. So on my windows, but you can do zoom in, zoom out. I just like playing with the windows instead. It takes a little more work, but it's easier. On the XM, on the X min, I'm going to say -5. On the X max, I'm going to say +3. On the Y min, I'm going to say -1. And I'm going to keep my Y max. And let's graph it again. And I just personally like doing it this way a little better. Okay. I see some things. I see that it does not have a x-intercept. It does not cross the x-axis anywhere. So you don't say 0. You do not say 0 for x-intercept. You just say no x-intercept. So for this, I'm going to say no x-intercept. Do not write 0 because 0 is a number on the graph. You just say no x-intercept. On my y-intercept, it's super easy to see. I see that it's crossing 3 on the y-axis. So my y-intercept is at, and I'm writing ordered pairs. So we do parentheses when we're writing ordered pairs. It's at 0, 3. But I can figure that out because if I do my y-intercept, when I plug in 0 for x, that goes away, that goes away. My answer is right there. So my y-intercept is going to be whatever that constant term is. I see that my lowest point is at y = 1. My lowest point is at y = 1. That's my vertex. I see my vertex is at -1, +1. That's my vertex. I'm looking at my domain and range. If I look at my function, I see no denominator. I see no square roots. So my domain is from -infinity to +infinity. My range, I want to do my lowest valley is at +1 up to my high mountain, which is going up to infinity. So my lowest valley, and range deals with my y variables, okay, my y values. I'm at +1 and I'm going up. I'm including 1 because there's no open circle there. I can confirm that by looking at my table. If it doesn't say error, that means it's included. So on my range, I'm starting at the 1 on the y, and it's going up to infinity. I do want to stress this again because I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying to you. Your domain deals with what's going on with my x values. The graph is going up and right, up and left. Right and left is domain. It's going on from -infinity to +infinity. My range is the y values. It's going up and down. So my lowest y point is at 1 and my highest y point is going to infinity. Now let's talk about the end behaviors real quick. And that's covering section 3.2. My end behaviors. And on the end behaviors, you need to make sure that you refer back to page 257. And I just want to do end behaviors with number 19. So if I'm doing my end, and I'm abbreviate, behaviors. And I'm on page 257, looking at the 4 images. We already know that the graph did this. And we see it here. We see it on our calculator there. That's what it did. And we're only focused on what's happening at the ends of the graph. That's all we're focusing on. If you look on page 257, it matches the third image. And we're only looking at the ends of the graph. Not the in-between parts. Just what's going on at the ends. I can say that my leading coefficient is 2. My degree, which is my largest exponent, is 2. My leading coefficient is 2. My degree is 2. My leading coefficient is a positive number. My degree is a even number. So when it is positive and even, it's going to match image number 3 on page 257. It's going to rise to the left and rise to the right. That's what it's going to do. So I'm going to erase all this because I want to make sure we understand how to write this out correctly. So again, the graph is going in 2 directions. It's going up and right, and then on this side it's going up and left. Up and down is Y, left and right is X. So on this side, Y is approaching infinity as X is approaching negative infinity. Look at it. Y is going up, so it's going to infinity as X. X is going to the left, so it's going to negative infinity. Read this one and write it out. Y is still approaching infinity as X is approaching positive infinity. So X is going up to infinity. Y is going up to infinity as X is going to positive infinity. So we have to make sure that we know how to write this out. You have to know how to write out your end behavior in this format. Another thing I can say too is I can say that it rises to the left and it rises to the right. And that's an easier way to explain that, which is just what I wrote right here. So important. Okay, so that's the end of our study session. It is important that you fill in the blanks on the ones I did not work on. Most of these problems are in your notes that you did in class. So it's important that you come to class and take notes so that you have that extra help. Okay, if you have any other questions, we will go over them in class. So please study over your notes and have a great day.